Hey, good evening, guys. How are you tonight, Monday night? I am your host, Engraver, for this evening, this live chat on a very interesting topic. So I am back from my trip. It's not really 2 weeks. It was about 11 or 12 days where I was going across the country to Idaho and back over to the East Coast, or relatively the East Coast, the eastern side of the United States, and it was a really wonderful trip. I'm still kind of adjusting and getting back into the swing of things with my composing and hopefully some performance gigs. I actually do have two performance gigs lined up this October for a couple of vineyards, so I'm looking forward to that. So I've just been, practicing my violin more and trying to get into that headspace for working and finding a new line of work. So hopefully it will, catch up to me. I'm not quite there as far as my headspace is concerned, but I am very much looking forward to this new routine. So we'll talk about what we're talking about tonight, but let's go ahead and welcome the chat. Okay, Prof already mentions that I look and sound great. Sound is everything, of course. So that's very good to see. We do have Melissa in the comments here, first in the comments, talking about some music she likes, I think. Team Ghost Planet, aka Melissa Harris and Sons 4.0 this time. So I don't know if it's a game you're playing, Melissa, but glad to have you here. And we've got, of course, my very handsome prof. He's quite close by, but he's also close to my heart as I'm doing this stream. And then we've got Big Al Presents. The Monday Night Muse has returned. So I am doing Monday nights. I just don't know if I'm going to do Monday Night Muse as the title, because I realized when I had that kind of title, it might have confused the algorithm where I just wasn't getting much traction, because it's a wonderful title, but just wasn't that effective in that I wasn't drawing people in. So hopefully I can still keep up with my streaming chops. It has been a long time. This is the first week of weekly streams, so I will be streaming weekly. That is the goal. So I took about 4 months off, and I had a really big, busy summer, and I'm just ready to get back into a weekly schedule again. So let's go ahead and welcome also Daniel Heron. Hello, awesome people. Hello, awesome Daniel. I hope you and your life is doing well as well. And your streams, if you're still streaming, just let us know there. And then Super Kashiyuka, don't mind me. Well, welcome. I haven't seen you in these parts, so I hope you are doing as well. And Sebastian Atlantico Rodriguez Capuro, nice to have you here too. Very good. I didn't even do anything as far as besides the thumbnail and the title of my stream. I didn't put anything that would set the algorithm to different people, but I am seeing new faces, and I am seeing a familiar face too. Horizon Talker, hello the chat. Good to have you. Yes, so welcome back to Monday nights. It's going to be 9 or 9:30. Just kind of be on the lookout for either of those options. I don't really want to go too late. I don't want to start at 10. So we'll definitely try to ballpark the 9 to 9:30 area. And we also have Private Eye on Retrospectiva. Sup, sound, good evening. By the title, I'm going to guess something bad happened. And actually, well, it's not bad, but it's very interesting. So let's get into it. But before I do, let me go ahead, as per usual, let me go ahead and put in my website, because I did release a 4-track album a few weeks ago. It's got kind of a cosmic space ambient vibe, but it has some nuances and soundscapes for your eclectic electronic music purposes. So go check that out. If you scroll down below the join the mail list, you'll see the album there as well. In fact, I can show you right now. Let's go ahead and share screen, Brave tab, and there we are. And so hopefully we can see that. Yeah, that looks good, right? And so this is my homepage, and then if you just scroll down, here's my new piece or album, LP, or no, not LP, EP. I think. Uncharted. It's a 4-track album. It's at about right at 18 minutes, just a little over 18 minutes of music for you. And a lot of people have enjoyed it. I've been really blessed to have such good reception. So there we go with that. So have fun with that. All right. So I do want to just get into the mood of what I want to talk about. I would say a topic like this can be instantly controversial, and I'm not having it be that way. This will be more a political, socio-political stream, just based on what I've been seeing in my old music college at the University of Washington School of Music. Now, even though it's going to be a heavier topic and it's going to be a political topic, I still want to be respectful. I just want to provide some insight on my experience as a music student. And I just want it to be a decent, respectful atmosphere. So even though it is going to be a political stream, using political words, because I will be reading an article, it will include some buzzwords and phrases. I don't wish to use buzzwords myself. I don't wish to see buzzwords in the chat that could get you, shut down. just know that this could be already a controversial topic. Now, for most of people I see, people who follow Professor Geek and Big Al and Daniel Heron, and you guys, I know most of you do, including those people. There might be some artists who would be interested in hearing this, whether it's the live stream or the replay. And I do want to bring it to the table, my position where I am in politics. I'm not going to go like in your face or preach to you my politics. I just want to let you know, artists out there, where I stand politically. So if you think, well, she and I, we don't see eye to eye. We are definitely in opposition to one another in terms of politics, not music, not creativity, but just on the political spectrum. I may be someone who might naturally be in disagreement with you, or vice versa. So before I get into this socio-political topic involving my school of music, or my old school of music at the University of Washington in Seattle, I do want to let you know that I, politically speaking, am a conservative. I don't really align myself to an actual party, but I am pretty much, by all accounts, a conservative. Now, that's not to say if there's a classic liberal who takes up a position that I agree with, I'm not going to disagree with them just because they're liberal. So it really does follow what principles I follow. One of the main principles I follow is the sanctity of life. So you probably know where I would fall on certain positions. So yes, I socially and politically, I am conservative. I'm a conservative American. I'm also Christian. Not only am I Christian, it's not just a name that I call myself. I am a strong believer. I practice scriptures. I pray all the time. I'm a devout follower of Christ. So I want to just kind of throw that out on the table. So if there are artists out there who might think, well, maybe she's this way, maybe she's leaning toward this way, I'll just not waste your time and tell you how I am right now. So that's right at the table. But in all fairness, I want to be respectful with my language, and I want to be, respectful, engaging with the chat, even if there are people who would disagree with me on certain things. So let's get right to it. This should be fun. I mean, I'm kind of going whole hog on this streaming thing with a could be rather controversial, but I want to really be amicable and friendly and all of that. And I do expect the same chemistry with the chat, have that same rapport, whether you agree with me or don't agree with me. Even if you agree with me, be nice to people who might not agree with you. So anyway, so let's go ahead. Super Kashiyuka says, it's a bit of Yellow Magic Orchestra. I like that. I'll have to check that out because that does sound like a familiar. It sounds like a familiar group, but I'd have to see myself. So, but if you like it, thank you. I do appreciate that. And just actually before I get into the topic at hand, I'm also currently working on a single I hope to release this October because it's paying homage to Ray Bradbury, the great prolific American writer. So that's in the works right now as we speak. So well, not as we speak, not as I stream. Obviously, I'm not composing while I'm streaming. That would take some talent. So let's get to it. So I'm going to read an article. I'll present it actually on the share screen too, and it's a very short article, but it's got a lot of points that I want to unpack and talk to you about. With certain events and the heightened state of really political upheaval, there really are two sides. They're really I would just for lack of a better phrase, polarizing. We are, at least in the United States of America, but I do see the same thing in Europe and other parts of the world, especially, in like parts like Australia and New Zealand. But in the United States, we're definitely at a point in politics where we've come to a state of tribalism where if you're not for me, you're against me. And there's no middle ground. It's about proving the other person wrong and being forceful with that. Now, I want to make my points, of course. This is my channel, so I can speak my mind, of course. But I want to do it in an educational way, and I want to do it in an insightful way. I want people just to take everything I say with a grain of salt and just understand that not everything you see in print is face value. And this is a very personal experience with me regarding my old music school. So this is going to be a bit of an impromptu. I was hoping to prepare notes, but the more I thought about it, the more I feel like it's just going to be natural if I just do it on the fly. And it's Owen Lister in the house. What did you miss? Well, we haven't started yet, but we are talking about a response to the socio-political climate. A college's response. My old college, my old music school, has a response to a certain set of events that have happened, that have transpired in the last few years. Excuse me. All right, so without further ado, we are almost 13 minutes in. Let's go ahead and get started. So I am going to share a screen, a tab of my my music school. Well, it's actually a page on my music school. So if you could see that. All right. So this is a headline. It's a very short headline. It's a short title and a short article. So I'm not going to read too much, but I will read everything, in length and talk about it in detail. But as you can see already, we are starting, and guys, be respectful in the chat. Most of you guys and we have the same opinions, but for those who are proponents of this idea, of this philosophy, or what I call ideology, we still need to maintain respect. It's always about treating people with respect and decency. But as you can see here in this headline here, it's all about diversity, equity, and inclusion at the University of Washington School of Music, or UW. And it's got a beautiful picture. That's probably Mount Rainier in the beautiful purple with the beautiful gold W, because purple and gold, those were my mascot colors. Husky is my mascot. Yeah, the school colors and the Husky is my mascot. So, I have kind of a bit of that affinity toward that beautiful picture. But we're just going to go ahead and take it away. And any comments that you guys have as I'm reading this and as I'm unpacking my ideas, please, just for your sake, on this wonderful platform called YouTube, please choose your words carefully and be very, very respectful in your language, because I want you to still be in the chat and I don't want you guys to get into trouble. And all around, I don't want this to be a controversial thing. So let's go ahead and take it away. Starting with this first paragraph. The members of the school of Music, the UW School of Music, are committed to engaging freely in the scholarly and artistic conversations with respect for one another's diverse views and experiences. We want to serve as a source of innovative ideas and accomplishments in music, while also establishing a climate that promotes respect for the contributions of all members of our community. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Everything that I had just read, this first paragraph, nothing, absolutely nothing is wrong with that. The interesting thing is this kind of environment was always encouraged. A little bit of backstory for me. I was a double music major in music education and in music composition. So I have 2 bachelors of music plus a master's from Wisconsin. But in Seattle, I was there for a good 5.5 years getting my double music major, my 2 degrees. And that was, I would say, the years there was about, I would say 2007 to 2011. And I stayed for 1 more year just visiting concerts and visiting friends. So I was really there for a good 5 years. So really 2007 to 2011 was the time I was there. So I'm going to actually show you or talk to you about my experiences all the way back then. So we're in 2021. I graduated 2011. That was 10 years ago. I got my 2 bachelor's of music degrees. So this is 10 years ago plus another 4 years. So 10 to 14 years ago, I'll tell you my experience about that. So all in all, establishing a climate that promotes respect for people of all kinds, contributing to the music school experience, that was always the case. Now, with Seattle, it was a little bit different than a school you would see in the Southeast region of the United States. So, I've lived in, now it's going to be 3 states in the South where it's predominantly white and Black Americans. But back a decade ago or so, this could have changed because I really haven't been there in the last 7 years. But 10 years ago and earlier than that, it was predominantly white Americans and East Asian Americans, especially a huge Korean American population. Seattle was a very international city as far as not universities, as far as U.S. cities go. Highly, highly international. You had business people of all parts of East Asia. So you would hear quite common Vietnamese, you would hear Korean, you'd hear Chinese, you would hear Japanese. It was very, very common to run into any one of the East Asian population. Now, when I was in Seattle, and Seattle is my hometown, so I was pretty much there in the greater part of the greater Seattle area, really until I was 24. And you just, unless you were in 1 or 2 parts of downtown, you did not run into Black Americans. Of course, there were Black Americans in Seattle. There were Black American students. I had a few, I think 1 or 2 Black American music professors. But all in all, it's not the same demographic over in Seattle, well, at least not 10 years ago, as it is here in the southeast part, places like Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia. It was a very, very different demographic. So it was very culturally rich in the international space. So I was just flooded with all kinds of culture. Now, not so much in Seattle, but in Washington State as a whole, there were many different pockets in different areas of Washington State of indigenous tribes, of Native Americans. So if you went out of the city and into the more rural aspects of Washington State, both Western a little bit, but, well, actually Western, I didn't see as much, but traveling through Eastern Washington, you would see Native American culture. You would see cues of Native American culture. So on the in that frame, in that Seattle frame, or in the greater Seattle area, as far as Western Washington is concerned in Oregon, it was highly international with East Asian population and also Native American and predominantly white American. So there I don't know how long ago it was, but I'm sure decades ago that there was a flux of people coming in and starting their businesses in Western Washington. Now, fast forward 10 years, it very well could be where the 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 numbers of white Americans and Black Americans can be more or less proportional. Anything could have happened in the last 10 years that I'm not aware of. But anyone in Seattle or anyone in Portland, just let me know if that's changed. But that was my experience, all the way up until 24, where we just had that international cultural diversity. So that was automatically a part of the music education. Not most students, of course, were American students, but there was a huge population of students that were international students that came here, via scholarship or going to medical schools and then taking their vocation or taking their training back to their home country. So anyway, that's the first paragraph. There's nothing inaccurate. There's nothing wrong with that first paragraph, but it was already there. So the statement actually might not even be necessary because that was part of the school's culture to begin with. All right, let me check the chat. Hey, it's Elijah Brown. Yeah, let me stop the share real quick. Well, actually, Elijah, I'll just read your comment. I kind of want to visit Washington State. I will say Washington State is a beautiful state. I didn't get to Washington State on my trip. But I went to, I went throughout Montana. Montana is a gorgeous state. Idaho, the panhandle of Idaho, absolutely gorgeous, just beautiful mountainous regions. Washington is topographically very diverse. It's got plains, it's got plateaus, it's got rivers and valleys, it's got mountains and hills and forests. I mean, it's got everything. So it's a very, very beautiful state. I would just probably caution against visiting the major cities because I understand that there's a little bit of upheaval. So anyway, but yeah, if you want to see as far as the geography, it's quite a lovely state. And I kind of talk about Seattle in a unfortunately now more than before. Unfortunately there are negative connotations to it, but I am proud that Washington State is my home state. Just wish it wasn't, what was happening to it now. But anyway, I think I know who you are. Let's just put this up. Yeah, beautiful state with interesting names. Yeah, it's beautiful Native American names and also just, yeah. It's just gorgeous. It's just such a gorgeous state. I'll put you up, Elijah Brown. There you go. All right. So let's go ahead and continue reading. Gotta go back to the page here. Okay, so we gotta scroll down past that beautiful mountain. Now it's just these 3 paragraphs. So quite a long paragraph. So let's kind of read it bit by bit if we can, or maybe the whole thing. I don't know. Previously we had established that the UW is trying to maintain, maybe trying to create, based on this statement, trying to create a climate that promotes respect for the contributions of all members of our community. The School of Music community is fully aware that our country and university face a critical moment in U.S. history that requires more than words. I just will give you a full disclaimer here. This isn't the best grammar. It's not the best writing, but I will read it word for word. So let's read this again, and I'll hopefully get into that good headspace for that. Let's try once more. The School of Music community is fully aware that our country and university face a critical moment in U.S. history that requires more than words. We realize that it is imperative to recognize that Black Lives Matter and that we must join in all efforts to affirm the need to bring visibility to artists and musicians who carry the identity of BIPOC, AAPI, which I think is Indigenous people like Native Americans or any culture whose voices and contributions have been submerged. Terribly worded sentence. I'm not asking for the job, but I definitely would have gotten an editor to snip a few things out of that. So this is a claim. This is a proclamation, especially when you're using a very politically forward, forthright name like Black Lives Matter. This is highly political. And in response to that, in response to recognizing, as they are recognizing this, they claim that we will join in all efforts to affirm the need to bring visibility. You don't, sidebar, you don't need this. You don't need to put these words, the need to bring. We must all join efforts to affirm artists and musicians who carry these identities. That would have been much better. Or any culture whose voices and contributions have been submerged. So submerged, not the best. Not the best word for a couple of reasons. It's just not a really good word to use in this context. If you want to use the language, the political colloquial today is really things like underrepresentation or something like that. Now, submerged also implies that these voices have been actively oppressed and put down and neglected and forgotten. And I do want to put in some counter arguments based on my own experience, but let's continue. We will use the expressions of musical art, coursework, and research to communicate the issues of anti-racism, and through programming and curriculum will center and recognize the labor of people of color and highlight the histories that have brought us to this point and the structures that have to be dismantled. Again, a very poorly worded sentence. So let's break this apart. So they've established that they want to affirm people of different identities, whether it's Black Americans, indigenous tribes. I actually currently forgot what BIPOC means, but I think POC is people of color. And then how they're going to go about that is using the expressions of musical art, coursework, and research right here. Now, let's actually just stop there. Using the expressions of musical art, coursework, and research. Now, not only was I a music major, a double music major, getting my bachelor's of music education and composition, not only was I a student getting 2 musical degrees, I was a student librarian who worked in the music library. And I will tell you this, whether it was journals, other forms of scholarly articles, videos, archives, stacks, of music scores, there were many expressions of musical art that pointed to different people, including people outside that, Western Europe influence. But even more, there actually are programs and departments in the music school that support that idea, that support that really does support that philosophy. But in the case of coursework and research, we'll get into that a little bit. And I'll before I forget, we'll get into this, but we're going to talk about the departments in the music school and how certain departments function as upholding different cultural aesthetics from all parts of the world. So they had already done this when I was a student from 10 to 14 years ago, using the expressions of musical art, coursework, and research, but not to communicate cultural diversity. This is what they say: to communicate the issues of anti-racism, and through programming and curriculum will center and recognize the labor of people of color. Let's just actually talk about not really the issue of anti-racism or what is it, CRT, critical race theory, which again it stems from critical theory, from those 20th century philosophers that actually go against the American tradition. That's just how it is. But to recognize the labor of people of color, which the labor. I mean, is that the labor of being a musician? Is that a labor of being a conductor? Is that a labor of being a composer? That word labor sounds like working class. It doesn't actually sound like something you would use for the liberal arts. So again, it's just a very curiously worded statement there. But using programming and curriculum to recognize the labor of people of color. Let's just talk about this. And I know people have a problem with the term POC. I actually don't know myself if I'm bothered by that term, or if I am. I actually just haven't given it much thought. But it's here. It's in print, so we're just going to go ahead and work with the language that we have. Bringing about the works, a collection of works, compositions, performances, video, visual art, bringing about and upholding the collections of artists of different backgrounds, in this case, people of color, has always been the function of the School of Music in the University of Washington, as well as really any standard of, any accredited School of Music in the university system. With the School of Music in Seattle in particular, people of color, as this language is saying, were already upheld by very specific music departments. 3 in particular. The jazz department. When you're in jazz studies, you're going to come across Black American composers, artists, and performers and musicians all the time. That's part of American history. I think if Wolf Tenzin, I can't see the chat right now, he says Black history is American history. And I think that statement rings true, is that if you're studying American history, especially from the Civil War all the way to the 1930s into World War II, you have a crazy amount of influence in that the jazz, ragtime, blues, big band setting that involved African Americans and white Americans, but it was predominantly Black musicians that took that stage. So the study of jazz from the standards to the eclectic to the contemporary style that we hear with freestyle, you're going to run into people, musicians of different backgrounds. That's just a given. And to say that you would not find that in jazz studies, well, then you don't know the history of jazz, because that's what it is. Jazz moved to places like Paris, places like France, but it is essentially American. It's an American heritage, and we're very proud. Musically, I'm very proud that to be American, to have that kind of heritage, that jazz heritage. So let's go ahead and continue. And actually, if you guys don't mind, I'll continue until we get to the end, and then I'll finish. I just want to make sure I'm not muted or I'm losing my sound. It's always a little fear I have. So anyway, so that's the first music department, where people of color would already be upheld musically speaking. The jazz department, jazz studies, just no question. The second is music education. Music education, I was a music education major, and they shared some interesting philosophies, but in addition to philosophies, we were taught to teach general music to kids of all ages, and we were also taught to teach kids of different backgrounds, whether it was an international background of an international family coming in, or a Native American school population. But cultural diversity was embedded especially in music education. The main faculty, her name is Patricia Campbell. She was the the front runner as far as cultural diversity is concerned. I mean, the major PhDs or DMAs of music education, their study was a kind of music, a kind of pedagogical practice on teaching music to a different ethnic group. That was a very common thing to study as a doctorate in music education. I only had my bachelor's in music education, but I was surrounded by people who were doctorates and who were graduate students, and that was their focus. Their focus was to be a conductor in a rural part of Mississippi. That was part of the music education experience. So jazz studies, and music education. And then the third, I would say the most important in the way of representing performers and musicians and composers of all backgrounds was ethnomusicology. Ethnomusicology, in its strictest sense, is world music. So you are actively studying, exploring, and archiving music of different people groups. Zimbabwe, Ghana, Tibet, Brazil. Your major or your thesis would involve a very specific country or a very specific region of a country. So the University of Washington, out of their 7 or 8 music departments, 3, jazz studies, music education, and ethnomusicology, already were working to uphold and preserve music of different cultural backgrounds. So this very curious wording here, and through programming and curriculum, will center and recognize the labor of people of color. It's like, you've been doing that. You were doing that 10 to 14 years ago. Did it change? I'm pretty sure that since 2016, it only ramped up. So why the statement now? Now, continuing, it says, and highlight the histories that have brought us to the point and the structures that have to be dismantled. Now, dismantling is a very strong word. It's a very strong word that really is used for, in language, in the political colloquial of dismantling the West. We hear, at least the podcasts I hear, this active tearing down structures of Western values and traditions. Now, this is very curious because this is a very distinctly American socio-political issue. Of course, Seattle's an American city. The University of Washington is a university in the United States. So maybe the argument was like, well, yeah, of course, this kind of political upheaval that involves the United States, yeah, this would be a natural thing for this university to do. But we're not talking about political science. We're talking about liberal arts. And we're talking about liberal arts in the way where Western music, Western traditions, Western music composition, performance, pedagogical traditions are very, very important. Not just to the Europeans and not just to the Americans, but East Asia, for instance, South Korea, China, Japan. I would say those specifically are very much influenced by Western traditional composition practice and performance practice. Places like Brazil and parts of South America bring in classical and neoclassical styles, and they're big on things like wind ensemble and big ensembles, big orchestras with involving conductors. So parts of all sorts of parts of the world have been greatly influenced and wonderfully influenced by Western tradition. So this idea of dismantling, which I do hear quite frequently, the dismantling of American tradition or dismantling of Western values and Western tradition. This proposing then, this is this is all speculation, but I would ask with the wording of this statement here, is this proposing the dismantling of Western music curriculum, at least softly? I'm not saying they would eradicate the whole entire curriculum. Who knows? That could really happen in about 20 years or so. But why put that in to begin with? This is a very specifically American thing. Things like structures. Structures that's such a liberal arts term, like post-structuralism or structural music or the tearing down of structures. There's this antipathy of that word. There's this antithetical approach to structure in contemporary music composition, especially in the 1950s and going on. And so it does make sense to see this on this page where it's like, oh, it brought us to this point and the structures have to be dismantled. I said, well, no, actually they don't have to be dismantled, because already 3 of your 7 or 8 music departments, I'm not even including composition, that's the other department I studied under, 3 or 4 out of 7 or 8, I can't remember, I think it was 8, already upheld people of color. That's a huge portion. That's a huge portion. So no, actually, by all accounts of my experience, and by all accounts, how those departments should function, jazz, music education, and ethnomusicology, how those departments should function actually should be enough to accommodate this idea. Nothing needs to be dismantled. So there's that. Just checking with the chat. Am I still on, guys? All right. Looks good. Looks good. All right. So moving on. We acknowledge that this is a challenging work. No, actually, you just do what you do with your 3 departments. And if you want to add it to the composition department, to the choral conducting, to the orchestral and wind ensemble conducting, and your performance majors, just add it to those, but not ham-fisted. You don't shove it in. So we acknowledge this is challenging work. It's not challenging at all. Just do what you've been doing for the last 20 years at least. It demands continuous care, time, and enduring. Let me say this again. It demands continuous care. I should say it's hard to read. It demands continuous care, time, and an enduring commitment to education on the part of faculty and students. Okay, let's actually unpack this a little bit. When you audition for a music major, when you go to get a music degree, what's the one thing you want to study? Music. Now, if jazz performers and musicians and composers are part of that curriculum, awesome. But you're studying the jazz. You're not really studying the socio-political issues not outside any context that does not really involve that musician's life or that composer's life. Now, actually, in the 1920s, in the times of like the prohibition, I mean, in the times, in the big band era, I should say, the era of the big band and swing and all that. Yeah, obviously there was actual racial tension between white Americans and Black Americans, but they still did music together. So, talking about that cultural significance is really, really important. But, why are you asking a student who wants to pursue music, like a violin performance degree, to take the time and care and commitment to this reprogramming or to this education? The violin performance major just wants to study the repertoire, and they just want to know how to perform in front of people, and they want to get a job as a violinist after their music degree. It's completely functional. So this extra demand on the time and on the part of the faculty and students, especially, okay, so the faculty is being paid, so that's one thing, but the students are paying. And I can't even imagine the tuition hikes since I've been there. That was a whole decade since I was there. And I remember this one specific thing where my last year in college, the tuition hiked up it was like 14%. And then when I graduated the following year or two, it was like another 14%. So tuition is already really, really expensive. So why would you demand paying people, people paying for their degree to do the extra work? It's just a little insensitive, at least in my perspective. I'm still paying off student loans. I'm glad I didn't have to go through the extra stuff, because getting 2 music majors was already really hard. I had a lot of my time and care and attention demanded of me. The School of Music commits to making our campus and department community more inclusive and equitable for all people. Well, there are a couple things to that. Again, they had already been doing that. They had fellowships for women. They had fellowships for women professors. They had scholarships for scholarships that had a theme. Yeah, mainly the theme for a scholarship is academic prowess and accomplishment, which I think is what it should be, regardless of your ethnicity. But there'd be a theme for someone who maybe came from a poor part of the state or kind of group or something like that. I mean, that's always been there. So the idea that it should be equitable for all people, well, what have you been doing? 20 years ago, it had happened. And I can't remember if I've ever told this story on stream, but I had a friend from high school. Well, he was sort of an acquaintance. He was kind of like a jokester kind of guy. You know how you'd have a jokester in your high school. And he was such a slacker. He was a really good athlete, but he was such a slacker academically speaking. I remember it was the time when I was finishing community college classes for trying to get my 2-year degree at the time. But I remember he was a senior after me. Yeah, he was a junior when I was a senior. But I had visited the high school after graduating, and he kind of came up to me, and he's of native Hawaiian descent. So, just a little, obviously darker skin, more narrow eyes, just he fit the bill of a native Hawaiian. And he's like, "Hey, Michelle, guess what? I got a Fulbright scholarship because I'm a native Hawaiian." I was like, "Awesome. So are you going to get some good grades?" Because I think he always complained about getting bad grades or something like that, besides, physical education. And he was kind of joking. He's like, "Oh, probably not, And I was teasing him, but it's like, well, like, can't expect a white American to get a Fulbright. Now, I'm sure there are white Americans that got a Fulbright scholarship, but we were joking that, like, he kind of knew that his ethnicity got him that scholarship, and it was a fun banter between us, but it was kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, like, that was 20 years ago, that was just a thing that happened, that people of different ethnic backgrounds would get a kind of scholarship like that, and for most candidates, they would earn that scholarship, and it's fine. But the idea that it's like, oh, we're going to make it equitable now, it's like, no, you've been doing that. Don't signal to me that you haven't been doing that. That only until now, in the year of 2020 and 2021, oh, now we realized we haven't been equitable. It's like, no, you have. You just forgot, apparently. So in 2021, or 20 and 2021, through our online performance and courses, this work took the form of musical programming that included a higher proportion of composers of color and composers of female. I'm just kidding, female composers. So this is another topic altogether. We talked about people of different backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, that are applauded and encouraged. I mean, I'm just to name a few. I've got Black American composers, and then a couple other composers of Afro-Cuban descent. Actually, there was one who was British too. But let's just list some major players in music history, and this is American history. for the most part. Scott Joplin, King of Ragtime. Florence Price, female African-American composer. William Grant Still. George Walker. Now you got the jazz giants, Miles Davis, Duke Ellington, John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk, someone I enjoy a lot. And an experimental pioneer in computer music is George E. Lewis. He played trombone, and he was a pretty good inventor and expanded the computer systems of just the algorithm and engaging. I don't think it was aleatoric, but he did electroacoustic music with his trombone and his computer. So that's a couple, and then a British composer by the name of Samuel Coleridge Taylor, and also Jose Silvestre White, who was an Afro-Cuban composer I was listening to his music, who had great Italian influence. He studied under, or at least he was highly influenced by, the great, mid-classical Italian composers. So already, you already have that history, but I want to make a point. I do want to make a point on this. These figures that I named, besides the last two that I named, wrote traditionally American music, whether that is jazz, orchestral, big band, film. It was highly stylized to be American and have that American influence, kind of like Aaron Copland with his kind of not bucketeer, but his frontiersman. He's got a frontier style where he's exploring, sonically exploring the great American landscape. Well, you've got people like Scott Joplin and William Grant Still, and Florence Price, beautiful orchestral pieces that had that African American flavor to it as well. But African American or not, it was still American. It was still that when you hear their orchestral music and their concertos and stuff like that, it's like, this is traditionally American. Now, I want to give you a sidebar. Traditionally American music, even leading up into the 1920s and 30s, and I'm not talking about jazz or big band, traditional music composition of the orchestra or the ensemble or the vocal music, getting into the 1930s and into World War II and into the 1950s, those composers, even if they were still alive and still kicking, their music, white or black, their music was overshadowed by contemporary postmodern influence. So postmodernism really did take the stage getting into the 40s and 50s and 60s. Excuse me. I might be catching a cold. Not quite sure. But so when if people are really complaining that Black American or British or Italian composers were kind of submerged, as this statement says, well, then you really need to consider what dominated. And it was actually the contemporary, the neoclassical, getting into the post-structural, post-modernistic style of contemporary music of the 20th century. That overshadowed mostly everything in the way of academics. So it doesn't matter if you're a white composer or a black composer, if you wrote traditional nuances and traditional style, like I heard with Florence Price, for instance, her music would be submerged by the domination, very dominant style of postmodernism. So that's something to think about for the school, something to consider, that there's nothing really wrong with learning about Dadaism and post-World War II music and all that. No, and I think that can be very educational, but that did come quite emphatically over that kind of great American landscape, kind of orchestral music of people like Florence Price or William Grant Still. So that is something to consider. So what needs to be considered then is, well, fine, go back to these composers. Have a night of just Florence Price. Have a night of just George Walker. Or if you have a concert where the theme is, Black American composers, so be it. But it might be a little bit short-sighted to say, oh, their voices were submerged, not because they were Black, but because there was already a wave of contemporary aesthetics already ensuing after World War II. So that is something to consider. All right, so that was that list. Now, I can't really, having said all that, I can't really discuss at length, different composers of different backgrounds, but I can talk about female composers. So let's go ahead and talk about them. So I'm going to reread this sentence, and thank you guys for hanging out with me. If you guys are still hanging out, oh, cool! I think I got an increase in audience there. Let's talk about female composers, okay? This is my game, right? Because, well, I am female, guys. I will always be female, and I think the prof likes me female. But I'm also a composer. I compose music every day. Let's talk about this statement here. Through our online performance and courses, this work took the form of musical programming that included a higher portion of people of color and also female composers. Okay, so female composers, here is the thing. I've got a lot to say about this, and this might be a separate thing. I'm just going to say right off the bat, in Seattle, but especially in Milwaukee, but in Seattle as well, when I was there 2007 to 2011, women composers, female composers were always brought to the stage. Whether that was a concert theme of only female composers, which is kind of, maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later, or a composer in residence, Shulamit Ran. We've had some female composers come in the composition department. We had notable composers in the contemporary world, like Kaya Sarayaho and others. So we had very, very famous female composers that we talked about and we discussed, and we would discuss their work, the modern ensemble, the contemporary ensemble, whatever it's called now. They would play contemporary pieces of works by female composers. But let's actually go through the list. I've got a couple pages just to show you that there have been very famous female composers predating the Renaissance. But actually, we will just start with one main one. Oh man, if you guys don't know who she is, I'll put it in the chat. I'm going to go through the list, and then I'm going to just talk about just how ineffective this one statement is about, upholding female composers, because that was pretty much my education as a music education major, and a music composition major. But if you don't know who this is, you guys who really like fantasy and really would love reading music or writing music, you got to check out, I spelled her middle surname wrong. I think that's, maybe it is right. Anyway, Hildegard von Bingen. She was, I can't remember her story if she was a saint, but she's noted to be a visionary who would dream up all these visions and colors. And that really, whether she had those visions or not, I'm not going to speculate, because, that's just not my task as a Christian. But in any case, whatever she did see, whatever she would interpret, was interpreted to music, especially for choral music. And she has some incredible pieces, sacred pieces for vocal works, just beautiful. She lived around 1098 to 1179. So this was the into the 1100s with her music. So she's pretty much the earlier example. But I'm just going to kind of breeze through this list. So pre-Renaissance, that was, we're kind of getting medieval there. Hildegard von Bingen. Renaissance, Francesca Cassini, Barbara Strozzi, Isabella Leonarda. So women who wrote predominantly vocal music for the choral, whether secular or sacred, but I think they were more into the secular. That because that's just what women do. But Leonarda, she was known to make history for writing instrumental music, which was atypical of women writers and composers. Getting into the Romantic period, Louise Ferenc, Fanny Mendelssohn, Clara Schumann, late Romantic, Teresa Carreño, Carreño, I think I said that right. Cecile Chaminade, which I had learned about. Amy Beach, I also had learned about. Modern composers, Ruth Crawford Seeger. She was I don't know if she was a pedagogue, but she was pretty famous in the music education space as far as teaching musical practices and in children learning, but also a composer herself. Rebecca Clark, Florence Price, that I had just named before, Lily Boulanger. I can't remember, guys. It's been like 12 years since I've heard these names, so I could be pronouncing them incorrectly. You do actually forget how to pronounce these names. But Lily Boulanger was a sister of Nadia Boulanger, who was a very famous, probably if not the most famous musical pedagogue of the 20th century. People like George Gershwin were thinking of studying under her. So a highly, highly influential woman. You've got some women whose scores I've studied. Sophia rather. Gubaidulina. No, I did not say that right. I studied her like 8 years ago, but I forgot how to pronounce her last name. Gubaidulina. And Kaya Saryaho is probably the most famous. And then, leading up to, people in kind of the the kind of the jazz contemporary freestyle, like Esperanza Spalding. I have a couple others, but, there were a handful of names that I actually studied the scores under because it was just common practice. It was just, you had to know these people. Now, I will say, probably it's a little bit on the edgy side of me to say, but I actually there have been 2 occasions where I thought I knew these composers to be female, and it wasn't until a long time with one of them years later. It wasn't until years later I found out this female composer actually was once a man who became a woman. And people say, well, no, she's a female. I'm like, well, no, because I just, intellectually speaking, men compose differently from women. I'm just gonna say that, like I'm not saying there's like a huge distinction. I was like, oh, that's definitely a female composer who wrote that, or that's definitely a male composer. But there are lines, you can't really hear it with the contemporary stage or the postmodern stage, but there's just kind of a feminine streak with female musicians and a masculine, more aggressive streak with masculine musicians or male musicians, and the same is true to an extent intellectually with composers. This is just my experience, and this is just my ear. But anyway, all that to say is that female composers were by and large always encouraged to be talked about and be invited to, like composers in residence. Famous musicians who are also composers who do their own music. I'll just say one more thing until I get finish this up, and so we can get into the chat, because I want to talk to you guys. Thank you so much for listening. But there's also kind of that drawback of putting so much emphasis on female composers, because first of all, there's a lot of great male composers out there whose music I like. Most of the composers I do like, most of the artists that I do like are men. It's just my preference. I just happen to like their music, not because they're men, but because it's the music they produce. There are a lot of male composers that I don't care for. So it's just kind of what it is. But I will say, when being female takes precedence in a concert program, this is just my experience, you can also you can run into some it's a bit of a crapshoot. There was one time where in Milwaukee I had I was a graduate student, and one of my professors, who she's female, she said, oh, we've got this group. They're, 3 Dutch women, and they're into, analog computer music. Actually, it wasn't analog computer, it was analog electronic music. And you got to go. I mean, this is a big opportunity to get known that there are these 3 female composers. And I'm like, okay, I'll go because you told me to go. I kind of want to just chill and write a paper or binge on something, but I'll go. It was a cold, wintry night, and I walked a couple miles with a friend in the snow, in the ice, and we went to this really kind of secluded hole in the wall venue in Milwaukee. And these women, I'm just gonna say it was an absolute train wreck. It was an awful show. It actually didn't even start because their machines broke. But rather than have any personality, they didn't even tell us. Like, they didn't tell us what was wrong. They just looked at their machines. We were just looking at them like, okay, is this like a performance art thing? But no, their machines were broken. And then we didn't get our money back. Like, we paid for I probably would have demanded my $5 back now. But they didn't even talk to us. They didn't even say, "Oh, sorry guys, this had happened." And maybe they didn't speak English, but it's like, you don't go to a concert just because they're female. You don't do that. You go to a concert expecting a good performance, expecting exceptionalism. That's what you got to do. Now, I'm not saying when you go to a concert of female composers, it's going to be a train wreck, but it was a very good wake-up call, not actually to me, but it was more a wake-up call to a graduate friend of mine who's, he is probably, unless he's changed in the last 10 years, he's probably more of that ideology. But he was disappointed. He's like, that was such a waste of my time. So, the fact that you are a female composer should not take precedence over your work. Your work defines your worth, not because you're female. And it is true, I would say, with anything. But that's just my tradition. So let's continue to go down. Did I say tradition? It's just my value. That's what I meant to say. All right, so more programming for female composers. Like, you've been doing that. Have you forgotten your history? That's my thumbnail. Was like, you've been doing that. Why this statement? You've already been doing it. Now, one thing to be sure too. Obviously, there are more male composers out there than female composers. Not so much in the contemporary space, like not in the last 2 decades. I think it is a lot more proportionally equal. But I could be wrong there. But back in music history, yeah, there were many more male composers, but they are not accounted for. We really only know the famous composers, even as music history students and music students. So I would say, yes, looking at the works of female composers, you do have to do extra digging, but it's not hard. It's not unfathomable. So there's that. All right, I'm almost done, guys. I'll get back to the chat, I promise. So more programming that is proportional to these people. Listen to this sentence. More actively taking diversity and equity more actively into account in admission to the School of Music. This is a college. I just wish that this was just phrased a little bit better. I think someone wrote this at 3 a.m. and they had to have a deadline at 6 or something. So taking diversity and equity more actively into account. Just say actively take, not more actively, just say actively. I guess if you want to do more, but just say actively taking diversity and equity into account in admission to the School of Music. Easy. Just too many words. So yes, so now here's another thing. Taking diversity and equity into account with the admission of the School of Music. I am so glad I was a student 14 years ago. I'm glad I was accepted the time I was accepted, because if I knew, and it could have been that this was the case 14 years ago, but if I knew that my professors over in Seattle and also over in Milwaukee accepted me because I was female and not for the darn hard work that I put into that portfolio. My portfolio for my bachelor's was awful. I I don't look back on that fondly. My portfolio for my master's, I spent a lot of time on. I really worked hard on my portfolio. And then to learn that I got accepted only because I'm a girl or female, it, I would feel a little jilted. It's like I don't I want to be accepted for my work, not for what I look like. Now, yeah, I forgot my point. I had a really good point here, but can't remember. Anyway, let's go back. Yeah, so working with graduate students on preparing statements of diversity. So if it's in your admin statement to proclaim something, that's a proclamation. That's an obligatory proclamation, and that's just in my experience as a student, there's no room for that. My proclamation as getting into the music school was to tell you how much I loved music and how much I wanted to learn. That really is the case. And requiring anti-bias training for search committees for faculty positions. Now, here's the thing. Getting a music professor job is probably a needle in a haystack anyway. And I knew some really good candidates who would have been amazing professors, and they never got they never got a chance because, one out of 500 applications are read, and, the chances of getting that kind of gig is really hard, at least in the music composition world. Let's say I was a good candidate, but there was a better candidate, but I was picked. Let's say I was a good composer and I was great at composing academic music, but I couldn't teach it. But someone else who was not, female, could teach and do it. I would want that candidate to be able to do it because, you could do something and not know how to teach it. Believe me. So this anti-bias training, the bias should be in the work. The bias should be able to judge and assess, hey, can you teach this? And if the person does a mock audition or a mock class, that should be the deciding factor. Really, that's all that should be. Requiring diversity statements from faculty applying for positions. So if I wanted to be a music professor, what would that mean? Requiring diversity statements from faculty applying for positions. I don't know. Within the School of Music, expanding courses. This is the real trick. If I was already faculty, expanding courses to include more components of diversity and equity, composers of color, and issues on inclusion and bias. That should be for the music educators, the music historians, the ethnomusicologists, the musicologists out there, and the ethnomusicologists. That should already be in the curriculum. The history, big band history, American history. If you are an American history professor, this would already be in your coursework. You don't have to go full lengths to talk about this kind of history. So are they asking for more? I'm not sure. And then the last paragraph, the School of Music is committed to providing support to anyone who has experienced any form of harassment or discrimination that impedes one's right to work, to a safe work or learning environment. That should already have been the case anyway. And then the school and the university have compiled a list of resources for obtaining assistance in reporting any form of harassment. Already should be protocol. Also below are resources that will assist building diverse musical programs. You've got 4 departments that already do that. And then lastly, one of my favorite professors ever, Joël Durand, he has oversight of academic issues and contact issues for relating to courses and grading. So this is a really precarious thing that can very much go on in the universities if it's not already been happening, where a person, whether a woman, a student who's a woman, or part of an ethnic group or an identity group, can say, oh, I got this grade because I am this. And then they would be listened to, even if they did deserve that grade. That this should not be the case. You should be objectively getting the grade you're getting based on the assessment or the answer key that the professor has established for every assignment and every exam. That this should be completely objective. Like there should be like, if that's such a concern, the student shouldn't even have like a name, you know, in the top right corner or whatever. It should be like an invisible ink that the professor doesn't know until after they've graded it, and then the name shows up or whatever. I mean, if I know that's kind of ludicrous, but it should already be completely objective. And then Giselle Wires, who's a choral conductor professor, contact for issues related to incidents that present problems on bias, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I mean, what a hassle. I don't know. I mean, maybe these two professors signed up for that, but I just would say that that is such a hassle for already what they have to do. They're already really busy people. So hopefully students aren't taking advantage of that. But anyway, that's that work, you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or I think someone said diversity, inclusion, and equity, or die. I don't know. So before I get into chat, does the University of Washington School of Music believe in the statement that they wrote here? I don't know. They very well could have, but I'd like to bring it to the table. Just this one last thing. I'm not really disagreeing with much of what's written here, but that's because I've already experienced as a student that all of these values were upheld. The idea of dismantling, that's not a value I uphold, and that wasn't the case as a student. The idea of now, you know, buzzwords, you know, that I see. I'm only using it because I'm seeing it in print here. You know, the idea of you know, communicate the issues of anti-racism. This is very, very new. It had, you know, the main school, the University of Washington, made a statement regarding the George Floyd incident. Now, we won't talk about it in detail. I don't really even know the situation myself, and I prefer not to talk about it in the chat. So be respectful, guys, if you haven't already been. But that incident, I know, really is what triggered this whole statement here. Now, it's true. They may very well believe this statement that they have written, but I want to bring it to the table here, and I'll stop sharing now. Hello, guys. Now I see the chat. I want to bring it to the table one thing. You know, I've just noticed a reaction, a kind of a reactionary response to social events, and now my School of Music is kind of falling prey to this. That, oh, we're going to take one major political social event and make a response. This response, though, as I've kind of, you know, diced it up, it has overall been ineffective. It's been redundant because, again, besides the actual current issues like anti-racism and stuff like that, most of these things like upholding diversity and people of color, as they say, they already did that. They did that when I was pursuing it, you know, 10 years, 14 years ago. So that was never an issue. You know, that was never an issue. So many music departments were already doing that in their curriculum, and I don't disagree with that. They should, but it's already part of the history. It's already part of that American history, and also in the musicological musicology sense, or the ethnomusicology sense, it's part of the world history, world regional, you know, regional music of different parts of the world. The thing I want to bring to the table is this reactionary idea. It's like, I think they can believe the statement that they've written, but I think they've only made the statement, this redundant statement, as a reaction to a historical event. If you notice, guys, I don't really watch the news, so I don't know everything that goes on in the news. But as you watch the news, notice like currently there are no national or international, but national, you know, in the United States, there are currently no national headlines on things like gun control. There are no sensational headlines on gun control on a national scale until someone gets shot. I don't believe the University of Washington School of Music would have written this statement if they weren't pressured outside to do it. I think while they can believe what they've written, I think it was a compulsory, or like we're obliged to, every department of the university is obliged to make a statement like this. Because why would you make a statement like this if you've been already doing this for decades? That's all I wanted to say. So let's talk, guys. Let's talk in the chat. I miss talking to you guys. Thank you for just letting me. We're already over an hour, so thank you for letting me just talk for an hour. So let's go ahead and get into the chat. I do see Wolf 10. Let's see some other people. I did say hi to Elijah Brown. Oh, Gigawatt. Is it Gigawatt? It's not Gigawatt. It's like a soft J, right? Yeah, it's a J. It's not a G. Gigawatt 1.21 is here. That's good. All right. Horizon Talker. Yeah. Evie. Oh, can't stay, but I hope you're doing well. Thank you, Evie. I'm sorry I missed you. All right. So hopefully you guys, had some respectful comments. Let's go through them. Oh, okay. I'll go in order, but let's bring this up. Thank you, Horizon Talker. AAPI is Asian American Pacific Islander. Thank you. Which makes sense in the population of Washington. So West Washington. Western Washington. Oh, it might, Elijah Brown. Yeah. I thought I should. No, I don't think it is. But I kind of don't feel like looking it up right now. I could be. I'll go ahead. Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Yeah. I thought when I first saw that, I thought Elijah the same thing, but it's Black, Indigenous. Oh, and then how do you have to look it up? Thank you, Horizon Talker. Yeah, good. All right. Yeah, I agree with Alyssa's comments on, we all have our own politics and political differences, but it's, I was a music student, so I think I was like the only conservative Christian in that space. Yep, very good people. Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong comes to mind. Yep. When it comes to jazz, that is true. Excuse me. Jake said he loves classical music and the Archie Sugar. I should probably know these pop references, but I don't. Wolfton, how I have missed. Oh, hey there, Sound Engraver. Hey, Wolfton, I'm so glad you're here. If you're still here. Owen Lister says the biggest problem with this diversity quota is that it's all about appearances and not so much on the diversity of thought and skill. Well, I mean, it actually expands upon that too. Like it's not even just diversity of thought. It's like people of the same race and the same ethnic backgrounds have differences of opinion, major differences of opinion too. I have an uncle in Arkansas, and he was talking with these. He's in his 70s, and he was talking with these elderly two elderly women who are African American, and they were talking with him, and he was talking with them, and he said, I don't understand what this racial upheaval is with everything going on. I mean, I'm talking to you, and I like you, and you're talking to me, and you like me, and they were in agreement. They're like, yeah. I mean, every times they were in the mid-70s, times were simpler. I'm not saying like 1950s or 1960s times were simpler, but I just feel like in the this could be just TV that I've seen, but I just feel like 1970s and 80s were just simpler times. Like, and I know it's sitcoms. I'm thinking of like, oh wow, everyone got together. I know that's not true, but I mean, him and these two ladies, they had been around since the 40s, late 40s. So anyway, wait, mid 70s. I always feel like they're born in the 30s, but that would make them in their 90s. Anyway. Professor Geek says, this bears so many resemblance to the hand-wringing in academia over the literary canon. Bring in the marginalized to replace the time-tested masters, regardless of artistic merit. Yeah, and you can get away with that in postmodern music, but you can't. You just simply can't get away with that with the classical era, or medieval all the way to the post-classical era, getting into neoclassicism. It requires aesthetics, it requires structure, it requires transition and flow, and whoever can do that best is the person whose score is going to be played the most. It just simply is. And my talk on or my thoughts on women composers not being having that train wreck that the three female composers had. Again, that's case by case, but I certainly wouldn't listen to any composer, male or female, if their music wasn't up to par. I just can't. It's just, I want to spend my time listening to music that is worth listening to. And it's just, that is the way it is. Now, on upholding cultural diversity, if it's a problem, then yeah, you got to do your research. And yes, you need to look into the stacks in the libraries and find good music and say, oh, this is a good music from this composer from this region of the world. Do the extra research. But the signaling, that redundant signaling, I think had to do with external pressure. Okay, so Wolf 10 has some insight. Because I've heard both, white Americans and Black Americans have a problem with this. I just haven't thought about it deep enough to say, but let's see what Wolf 10 says. Elijah Brown says, I feel you on the POC. Feels like more they care about the color than the person, a blanket term. And worse, they are adding letters to the alphabet community. Oh, dude, I saw the, oh gosh, this is a political stream, but again, we got to, I'm only talking about this because this is all about aesthetics and structure and form, okay? But I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. In the UK, there is a very big upheaval between LGB and the T. And there was one person, I don't know if it's a politician or someone, but they were for the T of the group. There's actually becoming a break, actually. The LGBs actually are going to the Conservative Party, and they're leaving the Ts behind. But one person said, "You can't have LGB without the T." I was like, "Well, yes, you can." In two ways: the actual letters. There's no T in LGB. And in the second way, it's actually a different philosophy if you think about it. But I'm going to let you think about it. We're not going to talk about it on my stream. just think about it at your own terms. But I found that hilarious. It's like, you can't have LGB without the T. Well, yes, you can. And in Britain, in the UK, they're doing it. There's becoming a huge divide on that topic. Yeah, Melissa points out, don't understand hard work. These ideologues don't understand hard work. Everything should be handed to them, and they play the victim all the time. It's, I'm female and I compose every day, but I'm not expecting to be world famous. If I'm world famous, it's because people like the music. That's the way it's going to be. I don't want to be famous just because I'm female. That's not fair. Because I hope, like, if I was born male and I was still into music composition, it'd be the same way. Oh, interesting. Well, my Catholic boyfriend would know this. Hildegard is a patron saint of musicians and writers. Well, there you go. Her music's beautiful. So she is a saint. I didn't know to the extent of like her visions if they were actually real. I haven't looked into her history that much, so if that was all speculative, but she was highly creative, and her music is gorgeous. Yeah, you guys who like to write fantasy, you got to check her music out and just kind of have that as your, um, especially if you like high fantasy, like high art, like Tolkien. Yeah. All right. All right. Super. Oh, is it? Are you a new person? Oh, no, you're the same person. As a French far lefty, I could say that all you have said makes sense, but there are hidden layers underneath the quota thing in the US. I mean, it is multi-layered, that is for sure. I would say just in general, I'm not like a philosopher, or I don't understand philosophy to a particular extent, but I would say a lot of philosophy just comes from too much thinking, if that makes sense. Obviously, it's not like a one shot thing. It's not a straight shot. Like, like in the way of like well, in Europe it's called working class, but here in America it's called middle class. Obviously, I'm not going to say it's 100% merit. There are factors. There are factors, but if we're going to look at particular factors in favor of one group, we're going to have to look about every single other factor and parameter that might not make that group look good either, if that makes sense. I won't get into specifics, but it's like, talk about, one particular factor of, education and urban communities. Well, what causes the high crime? What causes, well, the lack of nuclear family, for instance. That there are so many things that people say not you, super Kaishi Yuka, but people say it's all about this. I'm like, well, actually, if you go deeper, it's about this and it's this and this, and then we gotta fix it from there. But in the way of academics, especially in the way of art in like, post World War II, philosophy started happening where it was like, okay, guys, now you're overthinking it. It's really not that complicated. There's a cricket behind me. All right. Oh yeah, I'm not going to go too much into specifics. I mean, like I say, this is a socio-political stream, but it's like I'm not a commentary on social political issues. It's just, but what I'm talking about is my actual experience. To make a statement, for the school to make a statement, I was like, we are going to start to do this. It's like, yeah, I already been doing it. and that's actually the point of the stream. It's like, come on, School of Music, why are you making that statement? Because you've already been doing it. I know you did. 14 years ago you did, and I'm sure you did it before that. So that's actually the main theme of my stream. Not so much actual, political issues. Oh yeah, Wolf 10 brings up rabbit hole. Yeah, that could be too. Yeah. All right. Owen Lister says, I've been having fun designing my fictional city, Anvil, for a beautiful place, still getting used to drawing buildings. I bet that's hard. I bet buildings are pretty hard. I bet that takes a little bit of studying. All right. Oh, Wolf 10. Yes. No nonsense, Wolf 10. He says, in my business, diversity is not a mandate, not even a prerequisite. That's some fighting words, Wolf 10. Merit is what matters. Well, as a professional musician and teacher, I gotta practice, you know. Gotta practice. Oh, you know what? Oh man, I kind of want to talk about you raise a really good point, Owen. Um, oh, let's read what Wolfton says. You don't have it, work on it. You want to be here to gain it, then you better show me you can do it and don't whine. That's the spirit, Wolfton. Owen Lister, yeah, let's talk about this in the artistic sense. Yeah, I'm going to be 100% in agreement with you. This isn't political. I just want to point out how ugly the alphabet group's flag is right now. We need to stream on proper flag design. I know. So you know, talking about as a visual artist, I'm not a visual artist, but um, yeah, it's kind of there should be a better flag for them. It is really hideous. It's just kind of slapping new colors, and so the conservative rainbow flag, um, that looks fine. It just looks like a rainbow. But adding pastel to those primary colors of the rainbow, in addition to black against brown and then that white triangle, whatever that means, it is at the very least not well. It's not attractive, but it's not that well thought out. Yeah, I'm not condoning that lifestyle as a conservative Christian, but it's like any kind of lifestyle that I would want to parade around. I would want an aesthetically beautiful flag. So you're right about that. It is a hideous thing. Yeah. Anyway, that's not. You're right. That's not being political. That's actually just visual. Talking about the visuals. Yeah, I'm like pastel against the rainbow primary colors and the secondary colors. It just doesn't work. It's Shop Mononoff. Yeah. It's good to see you, man. Or woman. I think you're a guy, but I can't remember. Melissa says, me and Jake have a disability and we work hard to pay our bills. We believe in merit and hard work and no handouts. I mean, I'm not against handouts. Like Christians are taught to be charitable to people in need. We're taught to help the poor. We're taught to be charitable and help people in need. So I'm not against handouts. But it is when I would say when people who really don't need handouts would take advantage. I'm not one to speculate. Like, I'm not going to say, are you really a good candidate for that? No. But I also like I've been working and I make a very meager pay as a teacher, especially now. But I didn't know this thing about unemployment, and I'm like, what? Because I see all these hiring signs all over the country, like in Idaho, in North Carolina, in Virginia. It's like now hiring. It's like, why is everyone hiring? It's like, why are jobs so easy to come by? And then I realized there's been this policy of unemployment that's been issued, and it's like, what? I've been between jobs, but I've always had savings, and I've just never needed an unemployment check. Like, I would always plan if I was going to quit a job. I was always planning on working like that following week or 2 weeks. At the very least, if I'm in transition, I would have savings. But I don't know. Just for the record, guys, like, I'm not going to be posting political streams. This is kind of like an atypical thing. All right. Shopmononoff says, totally off topic, but some of the data science work I'm doing at work is regarding breaking stuff into trends and seasonalities. I'm not. Oh, what do you mean by seasonalities? Like something that is typical of a season? That's kind of fun. That sounds fun. Oh, excuse me. Oh, have I caught up with chat? Excuse me. That's nice. That's cool. I thought I'd have to do a lot more catching up. Um. All right. New comments. Okay, so shop on and off is a he, him. That's good. Sometimes you can't really tell by the name, but that's good. We're basically just converting data into frequency space and then re-synthesizing to get predictions based on off some assumptions. That's fun. That's fun. I've just been in this huge transition in my life where I remember back in May or June, I was saying I got to get back into Super Collider, and I miss it. So I'm just gonna start. I've been working on my single track, but I'm really looking forward to getting back into Super Collider into this end of the year, and then also into next year, and then working with that kind of indeterministic thing that Super Collider can do so well. So that's cool. I do miss Super Collider, and I've been working on MIDI protocol mainly for Super Collider, and it's good. So I've been making these MIDI scores, give or take. But I just miss synthesis. I really do miss sound synthesis. I feel stuck. I just got to practice it again and see what sticks. This has been a very hard year as far as Super Collider is concerned, and I know we all have one of those creative years where you're so focused on one thing, or maybe life is kind of in an upheaval or a huge transition. But I do miss Super Collider. All right. I think probably closer to 11:30. Right at the 2-hour mark, we'll go ahead and adjourn unless you guys don't have anything else. All right. By the way, where are you, Sound Family Place? Kind of. Let's just say I'm quite close to the prof and his family. So it's been good. It's just been a completely different transition, and I'm adjusting. I feel like this is just a very different way of life, and so I'm giving myself a lot of grace to just kind of ease in a few into weeks and even a couple months before I actually get locked in a routine. I do have I'm teaching Wednesdays. I have a couple lessons throughout the week, like Tuesday and Saturday, but Wednesday evenings is my teaching time. And then I actually do have a couple gigs at Vineyards as a violinist. My first gig is going to be this Sunday for a couple hours after church. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm a little nervous because it's an outdoor space, and the pavilion is beautiful. It's a simple, beautiful pavilion, but it's supposed to rain, I think, this Sunday, and I don't mind the rain because it's covered. But if there's any wind, my violin is not going to have the shelter. So I'm kind of hoping it's during the time of day where it's not rain, or if it is rain, it's like not hitting my violin at all, because you usually can't have wood outside in wet weather. So I'm just hoping there's no wind. Yeah, just been getting caught up with the Professor Geek's book studies. He's got 2 Towers coming up tomorrow on his Catholic Bible Geek channel, and then he has Ray Bradbury from The Dust Returned Thursday with Al. Oh, well, Al's on both of them. Sorry, Al. You're on both of them. It's just he's only done Thursday night studies, so I forgot what happened on the Lord of the Rings ones. All right. Oh, good. Yeah. Wolf10 says, managing Patreon and Subscribestar. Wish me luck. I just let us know how that goes, because I have not done that at all. I'm not thought to do that. Yeah, with the now that I'm back in streaming, hopefully I'll get some more public watch hours. I mean, I haven't had any videos in the last 2 weeks, which is unheard of for my channel. But I'll be streaming weekly at the very least, and then kind of throwing out some sound experimentation videos or music videos in the week. So I'm still not monetized. I have almost 1,700 subscribers, and I still am not monetized. I probably won't be monetized after this stream for sure. So it'd be nice to make a little extra change off of YouTube, but that's just a long time coming. It'd be nice like by New Year's, but we would see. I'd have to. Actually, the videos that get the most views as far as length of watch time is actually Super Collider, so that just has to be a thing. Anyway, Lister says, this is random, but have you ever tried vacuuming glitter off carpeted floors? You can't. At my job as a school janitor, apparently students are having too much fun with glitter on the carpet floor. That's a nuisance. I remember trying to soak up or suck up glitter from carpet. It can't be done. Just cannot be done. But I feel like glitter would ruin the vacuum anyway. The engine of the vacuum or the machinations. Wolf10 says, man, it's storming where I am. Lots of thunder and lightning. Ooh, I think you're California, right? Yeah, I was in Idaho. Wolf10, I was in Idaho. It's just like I love the Northwest, but the rolling hills of Virginia are now my home. So, and I'm very happy. The prof lives in a very, very beautiful part of the country, so I can't complain. But when I was driving through Montana, it's just like I spent my summers in Montana, and it's just I love those mountains so much. Shot One Off says, I don't want to say Super Collider sucks, but it kind of does. Is it UI is user interface, right? Or is it Eugen? I can't remember these. I got to review Super Collider, to be honest. And IDE has all the functions, but generally comes off as a hodgepodge of half well-written features. Yeah, that's probably true. What do you do? Because you are a programmer, but what do you do specifically? Yeah, like I feel like Super Collider is it's just gonna be one of those lifelong endeavors for me, until I reach to the point where it's like, well, I've done enough, but I can't see that in another several years, so we'll see. Ooh, more stuff. Oh, Gigawatt. I think I missed you. I think I've missed a few people. No, you guys have been commenting more. Okay, that's great. Yeah, kind of the same, Elijah Brown. Yeah, it's been the same for me. For the first time in years, I'll be totally honest with you guys. You know how I'm like all about like my theme for my channel is be prolific, create all the time, do it every day. And I do. I mean, I stick to that. But with my move, with my major trip, oh, my niece is so sweet. She's so cute. But with my move and my long trip, it has been, well, no, while I was moving and into my moving, I was writing, but and I was writing as I was settling here. But after my trip, I'm still kind of settling from my trip, and I need to start writing again. So for the first time in years, I've just not been writing. I think it's been like probably almost 3 weeks, and I haven't even looked at my manuscript. And I've finished my book 1, so that's in the editorial process right now. But I have major changes for book 2. I wrote 2 books. I wrote a big book, and then I just divided it. And I actually have to rewrite because I changed the world building of the first book just for it to make sense now that I have the world set a little bit better in my mind. So there's going to be major scene changes in the beginning chapters of my second book. So it's not just editing, it's going to be pretty much rewriting again. And I just wonder, like, can I still write? It's been like 3 weeks since I've written. Oh, thank you, Shaman enough. Material. So one vineyard. One vineyard didn't say. I mean, it sounded like I had free reign and could do public domain like classical and then popular music. So this one for this Sunday, I will be doing classical. I have a lot of classical pieces. Well, not a lot. I have a handful of classical pieces memorized, and then I'm gonna get into some Scottish tunes. I'm gonna learn. I've learned about 7 songs, Scottish songs, Scottish fiddle tunes. I'm gonna learn, excuse me, 1 more. So I'll have about 8 Scottish tunes. I'll see if I have time to pick up some Irish jigs as well. But if not, I'll just do that for another time. And then some popular tunes. So classical, maybe a little bit of popular, and then maybe some American fiddle and Scottish fiddle as well. So looking forward to it. I told the vineyard owner, I said, I'm just ready to perform as my means of income. I was kind of honest with him. I was like, he's like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm teaching remotely a little bit, a few of the students that I had in Raleigh, but I'm just really wanting to perform. He was fine with my fee. I do charge a lot, but at the same time, I'm very affordable as a musician of my caliber. So I actually can charge probably a little bit more, but I just want to be affordable enough where I'd be picked up more frequently. That's the goal. So yeah, I'd like to do my music, my own original stuff later. Once I get the PA system figured out, that'll probably be next year. That'll be a project next year. But in the meantime, I will be doing classical, Scottish, Irish, American fiddle, and popular music, including some jazz standards as well. Yes. The answer is yes, Gigawatt 1.21. Yeah. The happy. It was well, technically it was half of a half. Because in Arby's they slice it into 2 halves. So I had like 7 bites of the first half. So I had a quarter. I didn't eat the first whole half. So anyway. Oh, Chopmanov says, Patreon would be great for you, by the way. It's good not to worry about financial needs if you're trying to optimize creative output. Yeah, even a little bit with tokens worth, or yeah. Is it tokens or I'm not familiar with that word. I'm kind of sleepy too. Oh, is she Melissa saying goodnight? Well, good night, Melissa. I hope you're doing well. I'll probably see you at the book study. A couple book studies. It's close to the 2-hour mark. We'll wrap it up in a few minutes. Oh, and Lister also heading out. It's getting late on my end. I got to work in the morning, my second job in the evening. So good night, everyone. Good night, Owen. Thank you for stopping by. SC stuff notwithstanding, what would you want to make videos on if you had full freedom to chase whatever? Oh man, that's a good question. Well, I never feel like Super Clatter. Actually, any of my videos that I create, I never feel like it's obligatory, like I have to do it to get people interested. I'd do it because I love it. I probably could garner a bigger audience if I had like another topic, musically speaking. So I would be doing Super Clatter videos anyway. Something I would love to do, but I would just say I would have to have my life a lot more settled before I would do this endeavor, and I wouldn't be monetized, unfortunately. But something I would love to do that would take a long time to prepare as far as music is concerned is covers, violin, electronic, and maybe bass covers, depending on what my prof would want to do with his bass, for video game soundtracks. That would be fun. But it would be so much work in the making. And things like He-Man, the theme song for He-Man, that would be great. So doing, those kind of professional videos, if I had that kind of equipment and setting and the means to do it. I don't think those are monetized. Not that I would need monetization. I could probably make money just as doing arrangements of those things, or at least selling albums of that kind of thing. So I wouldn't really need to be monetized on YouTube for that. It would be fun, but it would be a lot of work. So I'm not saying that it's not going to happen. I would really like for it to happen, but that is just years, not years. I don't want to say like it's a long time, but it would be a long time in the making. So anyway, good vibes. Good. Oh, I'm kind of getting sleepy. Again, and I'm not used to streaming. So I see my eyes. They look like they're a little droopy. Okay, Horizon Talker's leaving too. Everyone's leaving, so that's probably a good time to wrap it up. But let me catch these last comments. Okay, so I'm a data science-oriented software developer. I say my core skill set is I say data mining, and visualization. Think Python, Spark, and SQL. I've seen Python. Yeah, that's cool. Chamana says, PA system figured out. What's the holdup? What are you gonna do with it? Well, I have a beautiful. I hope it still works. I wonder. Actually, let me show you the PA system I have. Maui 5, I think it's called. It's German make. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see if there's any images. Yeah. Let's see if you could. Oh. I'm done. I'm done with the school one. Let's share the screen. I'll show you the PA. I've had this for years. I thought I was going to use it years ago, and I still don't. It's about a $600 PA system, but it looks really sweet. So here goes. There you go. So I have, so I even really forgot what the features were. It's just been so long. So here's a picture. It's so elegant. So it actually can divide into 3 parts, where you just have the first part like about 2.5 feet tall, and then 5 feet tall, and then I think it's 7 feet tall, and it can go with it's got an elegant back here, Bluetooth. You got your EQ here, low end, headphones. You can hook up your device. You can hook up your microphone. And have a play, you can have backing tracks on Bluetooth and all that good stuff. It's a nice thing. Let's see if we see any more. Not really more, but yeah, you can see it breaks up. It's a wonderful, beautiful, elegant, sleek PA system. But Maui 5 is what it's called. If you're interested. That's what it was. $600, and it's a beautiful thing. So yeah, so I've had that for years. I thought like, I'm gonna do something in Little Rock, Arkansas, which was like 5 to 7 years ago. Crazy to think about. But anyway, everyone's saying goodnight. Okay, well, we'll probably wrap it up. So yeah, so I just need to see if it's all working again. And I just need background music, and find a way to my violin for that as well. Anyway, so I think that's everything for today. I really do appreciate you guys watching. It's been fun. So kind of look out for weekly streams 9 or 9:30, just kind of those times. And I'll get back into my weekly videos as well. It's probably going to be an update on Bradbury Lane for this week, and then maybe hopefully into next week getting into more. I would like to explore a little bit more with Super Collider or something else. So we'll see. But, Professor Geek's book studies, of course, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and also Big Al's rewatches as well. And, of course, all your guys' streams, if you guys are still streaming. I've been away from YouTube in a way. So thank you guys so much for hanging out and being really supportive in a rather kind of heavy topic, which is nice. But yeah, I wish you all the best for this week, and I will see you guys next Monday. So until I see you guys, just keep producing. keep producing and preserving the art that you love, and I will catch you next time.